British Prime Minister Liz Truss this week announced she was stepping down. After meeting with the Conservative Committee that sets the rules for selecting and changing the party leader, she said there will be a leadership election within this week, adding that she will remain as Prime Minister until a successor is chosen.
Security of our whole continent. I came into office at a time of great economic and international instability. Families and businesses were worried about how to pay their bills. Putin's illegal war in Ukraine threatens the security of our whole continent, and our country has been held back for too long by low economic growth. I was elected by the Conservative Party with a mandate to change this. We delivered on energy bills and on cutting national insurance. And we set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week. This will ensure that we remain on a path to deliver our fiscal plans and maintain our country's economic stability and national security. I will remain as Prime Minister until a successor has been chosen. Thank you.
For the likely implications of the ongoing chaos in British politics, which now means 3 prime ministers in less than 1 year, 4 prime ministers in a space of about 6 years, we are now being joined by a former Nigeria Consul General in Atlanta, Ambassador Joe Keshi. Ambassador Joe Keshi, thank you very much for joining me on This Is Live, the Sunday talk show. But you all recall that, of course, you know, the British, they had a situation whereby Boris Johnson had to leave because he broke government laws. He used his position to make a law that, oh, there is COVID-19, and with COVID-19, persons within the community should not behave in certain ways. But in June and in August, he attended parties in violation of the law. And at the end of the day, he was asked to leave the office. And then, of course, we had that whole process about, you know, the Conservative Party appointing a new leader. And Liz Truss emerged at the end of the day. But Liz Truss, in less than 45 days, he and the Chancellor that she shows, Kwasi Kwarteng, you know, have mismanaged the space. With Labour Party going far ahead, with many people asking for a general election, and with the leaders, senior leaders of the Conservative Party, saying, well, Liz Truss has to go. And now she has admitted, after 2 visits within 1 week by Sir Graham Brady, the chairman of the backbenchers, the 1922 committee, as it is known. But now, okay, I need to cut the narrative short. I'm sure that you know what that narrative is. We have Ambassador Joe Keshi with us. Ambassador Joe Keshi, I understand that you can now hear me clearly from the studio here in Lagos. Good evening. Thank you for joining me.
Good afternoon, Ruben.
Yes.
And happy Sunday.
Thank you very much. Okay, quickly. I want you to help us make sense of what has happened to Elizabeth Mary Truss in Great Britain. She came to power on the back of great populism, but today she's so unpopular. Even her party, the Conservative Party, is so unpopular. And next week, she herself has said she will have to leave, having been asked to do so by the leaders of the Conservative Party. What do you make of this?
I think that You know, before she came to power, she belonged to a group that had their own, I don't know that to call them, the other side of the Conservative Party. I think they call themselves economic libertarians, you know, who wanted, among other things, to shake up the system and create and introduce bold, as they call it, make bold and radical changes to the British system in order to grow the economy and rebuild the British economy to become one of the strongest in the world as it used to be. But I think she came at the wrong time. I think she miscalculated the mood of the nation. I'm not too sure that she had a very good grasp of what the situation in the country was, particularly the economic situation. And consequently, when she came up with all these bold plans, she ran into challenges. But the worst thing I think she did, for a lady that has said she wanted to be like modern-day Margaret Thatcher, she should have realized that this is not the period of the winter of discontent, you know, which enabled people like Thatcher to really push through a lot of radical reforms that changed the economy you know, a couple of years ago. As a result, one of the first mistakes she made was that she started abandoning her own policy that she has enunciated. Maybe she has, you know, stuck to them a little bit and hopefully they would have worked. Maybe she would have survived, but she panicked. And leaders don't panic. If a leader panics, this is the consequences of it all, that you run into more crisis. People exploit the weakness of leaders who panic. And that's exactly what she did, from beginning to sack her, from sacking her Treasury Secretary, then changes all the, you know, all the plans that has been put on the table. But I think the worst show that happened was that when she appointed a new Treasury Secretary, the guy was now acting like the Prime Minister. She just sat down there in Parliament, and while this guy enunciated, put forward the economic policies, virtually, you know, destroyed the Prime Minister and create earlier Big Bang, you know, policies that have been put in place. And consequently, her days were numbered when people saw the optics of that very behavior in Parliament. So I think it was unfortunate, but leaders should just learn to gauge the public. Sometimes in other places, you put out these ideas in a way to begin to gauge public reaction. And when you discover that public reaction is not going to be supportive, you probably slow down. That's why sometimes, I like the American system. For example, the President of the United States knows very well that if he sends a particular bill to Congress, it will fail. But they do it for the optics and let the public know that, yes, I tried my best, but Democrats or Republicans caused the failure, and he, one way or the other, exonerates himself. But it was unfortunate, and for me, I told friends when our brother from Ghana was sacked, that this lady just brought us up and then, you know, virtually just disgraced the black man out of office, and there'll be consequences and there'll be price to pay. And I think she did that eventually. Well,
Ambassador Keshi, I find it curious that you are referring to Kwasi Kwarteng and you are playing the race card. Is it about race? Kwasi Kwarteng failed Economics 101. Is it about race? I don't think so.
No, it's not about me. I just added that on the lighter side. You know, there was some hypes when he was appointed, and we thought that, yeah, you know, they were making progress, and suddenly 26 days or how many days later, you know, the worst happened. You know, no, it's not about race, and I just, you know, just chip that in because I've been saying to people, can you imagine how this lady has disgraced us, you know, but that's on a lighter note, not about race.
Okay, now that Elizabeth Truss is on her way out, we've seen in the British papers in the last 72 hours, permutations. Some people are saying Rishi Sunak, you know, has been able to get the required 100 signatures of the members of parliament. We've also been told Boris Johnson has suddenly gone back and that he too has 100 signatures. If you were to make a prognosis, who do you think would be the better choice? I mean, you and I, we don't have a vote in the matter, but look, Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak, and what is at stake for the British?
Let me take Boris Johnson coming back. You know, when I heard that Boris Johnson was on his way back from the Caribbean to again try to regain power, I remembered, and I said to myself, I remembered, I think it was Mrs. Obama, who in one of her memorable speeches said that the presidency or the, let me say here, the prime ministership does not define who you are, you know, and that it hardly doesn't change you if you didn't come with that, with a particular character to be able to, you know, to handle the office. Everybody knew the character, the behavior, the personality of Boris Johnson when he came, you know, even before he became Prime Minister. And they knew that a disaster could happen, and it did happen, you know, as it went on. And now it's interesting that some people are even considering him, knowing fully well that there are other issues that are yet to be resolved. And as some analysts have pointed out, even if he's appointed Prime Minister, there are some inquiries that are expected to resume very soon. And if he's found guilty, he will be, you know, forced to resign for the second time. So that leaves only one candidate. And by the way, Richard Sunak, you know, had what you could describe as possibly the best, you know, policy in terms of comparing the former candidates. And one of those things that he said that was very interesting and had turned out to be true, she warned that the policies being proposed by the former Prime Minister was very risky. And it turned out to be true. So I think that the British people, or rather the Conservative Party, should take a risk this time and, you know, push him forward as a Prime Minister, and let's see. I think most people are getting comfortable with him that he would do a better job at least than the last, you know, Prime Minister.
Okay, Ambassador Keshi, are there lessons that we can learn from what has transpired in Great Britain? Because some people say, well, maybe there are lessons
I think,
we can learn.
In everything in life, there are lessons to be learned. And I think if you ask this lady, she would probably tell you quite frankly that one lesson was that she moved too fast. She had not settled down. You know, ministers have, look, one lesson, if you follow the British system, and why the British system has always worked so efficiently, very well, you know, was the fact that they have created a system that enabled them to hit the ground running because there is, you know, not a large turnout or turnover of personnel in terms of ministers and, you know, senior members of government. They come in and out, you know, as often as possible. But this lady formed a cabinet in which she did not even bring some of the best hands in the Conservative Party. So she just surrounded herself with a bunch of her friends and did not bring in, you know, some of the good hands from the opposing, you know, parties. This was the first criticism that was made against her, and we've seen the consequences. I think the second thing is that, yes, you might have prepared yourself for office, and of course, she didn't have enough time. If you remember, she was away in New York. When Boris Johnson made the announcement, she rushed back immediately, threw herself into the race and, you know, promised to do this and that. If she had slowed down, tested the public mood, she probably would have reversed some of her ideas before she made them, you know, public, you know, before she made them public. And I think the most important thing is that, look, politicians should honestly take a good look at the people they want to bring to office so that they do not run into this type of a crisis, particularly in a parliamentary system as you have in a number of places. She's very intelligent, she's very sound, qualified to be Prime Minister, but then the question is, what went wrong? A couple of things, because in my view, she was too hasty to get her bold and radical plans, you know, when the environment was not conducive for such bold and radical plan. And so she could have decided to go incrementally and see how things would, you know, will shape out or turn out at the end of the day, you know. So leaders should not just come in and think that, oh, because I have won election, you know, she has not won an election. She was brought in by the Conservative Party. And so then she was going about screaming that she was going to govern like a conservative. No, what she could have done was move a little bit to the center until post-election, if she had stayed till after the election. Then she would have been given the mandate to do whatever she had promised she would do.
Okay. In terms of lessons for Nigeria, you just mentioned the parliamentary system of government. Do you think that that has been a major factor? Because you see ministers resigning and saying, oh, in the UK, you know, I'm out, as Penny Mordaunt did. Do you think that Nigerians have something to learn about that system of governance? Do we need, in Nigeria, for example, to begin to think of maybe the parliamentary system of government, where people wouldn't be so desperate? Yes, Kwasi Kwarteng may have been asked to step aside, but he's gone back to the backbench. He has not lost anything. What do you think about the system of governance, this winner takes it all system that we operate here in Nigeria?
You know, when the presidential system was introduced in this country, many of us thought that given the diversity of this country, the political environment in this country, we needed a very strong president. I mean, we needed a fairly strong president that could manage and then pull the country together all the time, you know, as it is sometimes in the United States. Never mind that they too are as divided as we are, you know, today. But I think the whole process has been mismanaged. And quite frankly, it is very, very difficult to say we are returning to the parliamentary system. I don't see that happening. So let's not wish for what cannot be achieved. I think the best that can happen to us moving forward, and then this election gives the people, you know, the opportunity to look at the candidates and decide based on what they are saying and what they intend to do, which of the candidates in the race today will be the best for this country. Is it the new entrants, you know, some of whom are sounding to be as if, yes, we too can take a risk and try the new, you know, candidates, obviously because we have seen the other two, but the leading candidates, we have seen them, we know the antecedents, never mind some of the beautiful brushes that they are being painted with now. We've lived with them in this country. We've seen what has happened. And I think there's something circulating, particularly on the WhatsApp, on all the promises that were made by the APC, for example, of which none was, you know, fulfilled. And not to talk of, you know, people can cite an example of some of the failures of PDP over the years. So for us, this is an opportunity, hopefully, that the next, you know, government, you know, will try to really begin to see how some changes can be made into the, with regards to the political, you know, environment. But we can certainly not go back to the parliamentary system. And so what we need to do is to find a way to make the presidential system work. And that means that we need to reduce the powers of the central government. You know, we need to do quite a number of things, including a whole lot of decentralization. you know, in order to make things work. And until we do that, we'll continue to have a lot of crises. Yes, I know the states have capacity issues. I know these governors have seized power in the states, and they are the only lords and emperor that exist there today. But again, maybe we need to find a way, make a law, you know, because that's where that part of the Constitution where they said is the chief executive, you know, has actually made governors to assume so much powers. And so many of them, don't forget, many of the governors came post-military. And so they are ruling just like the central government itself. There's still some bit of, you know, military administration, you know, in the system we are operating today. So we need to do away considerably, you know, with some of this and allow the federation to run the way a federation should run, in which the federating states have the powers as it was in the early 60s, and a lot of development, you know, was achieved during that, that period. And the federal government will concentrate on the issues that they did in the 60s, defense, foreign policy, and fiscal policy, and let the states, you know, be the centers of development. Let's restore back the competition that propelled and created so much hope for this country in the post-independent days. And once we do that with the tremendous amount of human capital in this country and the resources in this country, if well and properly managed, I just think that we can reduce by well over 60% some of the problems we have in the country today, particularly in the leadership sector. Okay.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Keshi. But before you go, do you think that Boris Johnson, the man known popularly as Bojo, would be a better choice for the British, given the circumstances on the table?
No, I don't think so. I think we started with this. And I said, you know, I quoted Mrs. Obama that the presidency or the prime ministership doesn't define who you are. It doesn't really change you. You should have, you know. So if for a man who came to office with all the baggage that Johnson, Johnson has, it's very difficult to see Johnson behaving differently. When he was the mayor of London, it was the same behavior. And by the way, you know, why was he removed? He was removed simply because he lied on a few things that he didn't actually need to lie. But then Johnson is known to have been lying right from school. And so he lied throughout from school, throughout his days in politics, in journalism, as mayor of London, and got to the premiership. And what happened? The same problem of lying when there was no need to lie, and that got him into trouble. Who says that he will not repeat that in his second term? But I also said there's an inquiry that will start, I think, by next week or the other week, you know, by the parliamentary inquiry. If he's found guilty, he'll be compelled to resign again. So as I said earlier, let the British people take a risk and the Conservative Party take a risk and select a new prime minister.
On that note, Ambassador Joe Keshi,
and Britain will be better off for that.
I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show.